Hey guys, this is Queen3210 here. Now I don't normally make videos like this, but just because I don't like actually filming myself on camera. However, I chose to take a step out of my comfort zone just because there's something I really want to talk about, and that something has to do with copyright infringement as well as the fair use law. Now, I've been here on YouTube for several years now, and it was only in this past January that I started posting videos, Let's Plays as we call them. Basically just my gameplay off of video games that I played usually for the first time and posted on YouTube just for the enjoyment rather of the YouTube community as well as the internet community. Now, ever since I've started posting these videos, I started receiving notices known as copyright notices, basically saying that I'm using copyrighted product or footage on my videos, and that someone has complained, pretty much. This alarmed me just because I had seen other people doing the exact same thing, only to see the vast enjoyment that was to be had by all, and I wanted to be part of that. So as a result, that's why I sort of got into it, just because I wanted to share my personal gameplay as well. However, getting these notices, it changed a lot of things. Like, eventually, it got to the point where I had so many notices that YouTube put a strike on my account, and the repercussion to having the strike was that the video length of the videos I would post would be limited to that of 15 minutes. I was originally notified that this limitation imposed on my account would last roughly 6 months. However, it was only a couple months later that it was actually removed, and thus I was able to post videos of any given length at that point in time. But even before that, though, I was consulted by a friend of mine who had run into the same situation, and he suggested to me that I should probably put a notice on each of my videos expressing that they were protected by fair use, and that if the owners of that particular product were interested in conversing with me or talking to me about it, or if they felt in some way, shape, or form that I was misusing their product, that they were free to contact me. But I still received these notices. I disputed quite a few of them, only for my disputes to fall on deaf ears, to be otherwise tossed to the side, and then the notices were back. As a result, I did a little bit of research and decided to post this video, if only to express my side, because it feels like nobody's listening and that I don't have a voice on a site that gives people the voice to express themselves freely. And with this video being posted, I'm hoping that not only can I put this issue to rest, but that the harassment of these notices will stop and I can pretty much go back to the way things were before I started getting these notices. Now, I've looked all over the internet in regards to both the copyright law as well as the fair use law, and every site I went to pretty much said the same thing. According to Wikipedia specifically, the copyright is a legal document enabled by most governments, giving the creator of an optional work exclusive rights to it, usually for a limited time. It is the right to copy, but it gives executive rights to the copyright owner. For instance, they get to decide who gets to profit from this, who gets to actually copy their product. It gives them the right to be credited for their work. It determines who may adapt the work to other forms, who may actually perform the work, as well as additional related rights, including who may benefit financially from this work. It is a form of intellectual property that is applicable to any expressible form of an idea or information that is substantive or discrete. Now, when I was searching for information in regards to the fair use law, I came upon the same situation where a lot of what I was reading was pretty much the same thing. Now, what I took away from it was that while the copyright law exists to protect the original owners of this work, copyrights are limited by the doctrine of fair use, which under certain circumstances uses copyrighted material for criticism, commentary, news reporting, teaching, scholarship, or research that may be considered fair. Now, there are 4 factors that determine fair use. Just because one of these factors is not met in your videos or in whatever literature you post does not necessarily mean that it automatically does not meet the conditions of fair use. It simply means that all 4 of these factors are taken into account when talking about and when determining whether or not a piece of work is considered to be protected under fair use. The first factor is the purpose or character. The purpose or character of the use in question. For example, is it commercial use or is it non-commercial use? I.e., are you getting paid for it or are you not getting paid for making this production, or are you benefiting from making this production, like financially? The other thing that falls under this particular factor is whether or not it adds new expression to the form of work, or if it's just blatantly copied and posted and pretty much plagiarized. Now, let's use one of my Let's Plays as an example. Pretty much, these videos that I have posted, all of these Let's Plays that I've posted, they fall under non-commercial, which means I don't get paid for it. I don't make any profit from posting these videos. I don't make any profit from people watching these videos. I just do this at my leisure for the fun of it. The second point is whether or not it adds new expression, or if I just blatantly copied it. Obviously, I didn't blatantly copy it, as it is the original game itself, minus, it obviously with all the characters intact and whatnot. However, I believe that it adds expression because it's my specific playthrough of that particular video game. As a result, it adds expression because it's my personal take, my personal experience in playing this game. Everyone's going to have a different experience when they play this game, or any game for that matter. My experience playing it might be different from, say, someone else's experience. My reactions might be different from other people's reactions. As a result, it brings a new perspective to people who are watching this video, something that they cannot be gained unless they personally play this game themselves. So it's not to say that this is a situation where I copied the game, because obviously I didn't if I'm posting it as it is in its entirety. It's not me blatantly saying, yeah, here's the game, you don't have to worry about going out and buying it or whatnot. This is just my personal experience in playing this game. This is my personal gameplay. And my personal gameplay will definitely differ from other people's personal gameplays, because no one person can recreate the same experience. Or at least in my experience, that is not the case. I simply play the game in order to post it online and to share my gaming experience with the online community. Now, the nature of the copyrighted work is the second factor. Basically, this is determined, the answer to this question of whether or not it falls under fair use is determined based on the work itself. And in this consideration, it takes into account whether or not the copyrighted work is a work of fact or a work of fiction. If it is a work of fact, then it is concluded that because it is open to the public, or otherwise known as in the public domain, it is thus easily accessible to everyone, and thus, as a result, anybody can use it without permission. If it is a work of fiction, on the other hand, it is a work of that person's creative mind, and as a result, in most cases, you will need permission in order to be able to utilize this piece of work. This is where the factor actually hurts my argument as opposed to supports it, because what I use for my videos is gameplay from video games, which are generally a work of fiction, rather. However, this does not necessarily mean that my argument is completely disputed. It just means it's very unlikely that this factor will support it. And this is due in part to the fact that this particular factor cannot be the sole means of deciding whether or not the argument of fair use is derivative. Basically, what I'm saying is, of the four factors, this factor holds the least clout, which means, again, it alone cannot be the deciding factor whether or not a work of art, a work of someone's, or a video posted using someone else's work is an act of fair use or an act of copyright infringement. Now, the third factor depends on the amount or substantiality of the portion of the copyrighted work that was used in your own work. Basically, it means how much or how little of that particular work did you use when you put it in, for the example of this video, in the actual video. The general rule of thumb is the less of the copyrighted material that you actually used, the more likely that you will receive a ruling of fair use. But there is an exception. And that exception, it has to do with whether or not there was sufficient transformative act to the actual video. Basically, whether it adds new expression to the original material, or if it was just blatantly copied. If it was in the former, then chances are that this particular factor can be overruled. Now, taking in regards to my videos and my Let's Plays, this portion of that particular factor helps me because, once again, the commentary and my personal perspective that comes from my playing the game in particular means that I'm adding expression to the actual game itself, and thus it is not outright copied, thus it has potential of winning this particular argument for the fair use clause. Now, the fourth and final factor that determines fair use is the effect that the secondary piece of work will have on the copyrighted work's value, as well as monetary gain for the copyright holder. Basically, what this means is whether or not the secondary piece of work can be used to substitute the original piece of work. If it is deemed that it can be substituted, then it is deemed not fair use. If it is deemed insufficient enough to be able to substitute the original work, then it is deemed fair use. And the means of which to declare whether or not this is the case depends solely on the secondary work being either commercial or non-commercial. If it is commercial, then the burden of proof falls on the defendant to prove that this will not, in fact, harm or have a negative effect on the copyright owner's profitability of the copyrighted work in question. If it is a non-commercial piece of work, then the burden of proof falls on the copyright holder to prove that without a shadow of a doubt, the secondary piece of work's existence will harm its profitability and its value. However, simply saying that something that is said online will have a negative impact on someone's decision to purchase said product is not enough to actually determine whether or not its value will be lost. There actually has to be proof on this matter. That being said, the additional benefit to having the secondary piece of work is that it can actually provide free advertising for the copyright holder and thus vastly improve the profit margin that this person might have. For instance, in the form of this Let's Play, someone who is currently undecided about whether or not they're going to purchase a game might decide they're going to watch someone else's gameplay and see for themselves whether or not it's interesting enough that they might actually spend them $60 to purchase the game. This actually happened to me. The very first game I ever played that I posted online, Far Cry 3, was ultimately decided upon me to purchase based on someone else's Let's Play. I watched a fair bit of it up until I think maybe the second mission before I decided that hands down I needed to get this game. So there's an example right there of positively impacting a product's value. They might like the game so much, they might enjoy the game, watching the gameplay so much that they might actually want to try it for themselves. Now that we've gone over the 4 factors that determine fair use, let's go over some of the most common videos that are protected under fair use in most cases. Some cases may vary depending on situations and how well the person who posted the video was able to basically back up their claim and whatnot, because let's face it, not everyone is perfect, and it's possible that their videos might have been unfairly terminated despite their claims of fair use. Now, the most common videos floating around YouTube that would be considered fair use are as follows. First and foremost, probably the most common, arguably the most common rather, are anime music videos, or otherwise known as AMVs, and film mashups. Now, these works are considered fair use because while the owner of the video is still using the full length of a copyrighted song, they are throwing intermittent clips into the actual video itself, thus giving it a different perspective from what the song was originally intended. Basically, it's giving this video a new expressive perspective. And it makes people think about it, and 9 times out of 10, it's actually seen more or less as free advertisement for that particular song, and in a lot of cases, many people will go out and buy the CD or download it from iTunes because they like the song so much that they want it. So in a sense, again, that's free advertisement. That's money in the pocket of the copyright holder. Now, these videos in particular are what is called a transformative video because it gives new perspective on the original content, giving it a fresher look, and again, it's not blatantly ripping it off. It's experimenting with it creatively. The second video, the types of videos that would be considered under fair use would be parody videos. These are once again considered transformative videos because they provide they provide a different outlook and perspective of the original content. The most popular and probably the most famous example to use would be what Red versus Blue has done to Halo. The creators of Halo could have easily just turned around and said, no, you can't use our content, you can't put it online. However, they also recognized the potential of free advertising that they could receive, because many fans of Red versus Blue flocked to buy Halo just because they wanted to see what the game was all about. And thus it became sort of a cross advertisement, because Halo itself started throwing in all of these Easter eggs in regards to Red versus Blue. It's perfect. It's actually the perfect example to use for this particular scenario, just because while Red versus Blue uses Halo graphics and whatnot in their series, they use it to tell their own story. So they're using something from a game in order to create something creatively. A lot of other series places do it too, like Little Karibo with Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged, Team 4-Star with DragonBall Z Abridged, as well as Hellsing Ultimate Abridged. Those are all creative uses of the original content, and on top of that, none of them make any profit on it. So there you go. There's that argument. Another common type of video that is on YouTube that is protected under fair use is filming yourself while singing copyrighted songs. Now, this threw me for a loop too, because I thought, obviously, this is a blatant rule breaking. They're singing the song themselves. While they're singing the song themselves, it's a song that they haven't gotten permission from, and thus technically they shouldn't be allowed. However, it also falls under the transformative video definition, simply because while they are singing a copywritten song, in a sense, 9 times out of 10, they're actually using their own voices, and they're giving new expression to it, because they might be utilizing it in scenarios and situations that the original copyright owner might not have originally thought of using. Like one song singing about, well, I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, to be perfectly honest, but you can use this kind of art in different ways, like the music video to the original song, to the owner's song done by the original owner might be vastly different from the YouTube personality who decides to make it into their own video and then post it online. That being said, lip singing is less likely to be utilized as fair use, simply because you're not using your own vocal cords, you're actually lip singing to the original song, and thus it's less likely to be considered fair use just because of that small little detail, regardless of how creative your video is. It's not to say that it won't be considered fair use in the end, it's just to say that it is less likely to be considered fair use in comparison to videos where the person who's posting the video has sung the song, or whoever's in the video has sung the song themselves. Another popular type of video that's on YouTube that is protected under under fair use is movie reviews that contain clips of copyrighted films. Does anybody online remember the nostalgia critic of thatguywithglasses.com? He's the guy in the jacket with the hat and who wears a tie and reviews pretty much at this point in time any type of movie. Well, when he first started out, he had issues with YouTube because they would delete and remove all of his videos on YouTube, well, most of his videos on YouTube rather, due to copyright infringement. Turns out they were very wrong in doing this, because since he was providing reviews for the actual video that he was adding clips to and talking about it in a way that any type of movie critic would actually talk about it, this means that technically all of his videos were protected under fair use. He, much like any other reviewer on YouTube or online anywhere, is protected under this law based on the fact that their videos provide new perspective and new expression to the movies in which they review. And it's not just limited to movies either. It can be video games, it can be music, it could be anything that has anything to do with media, to be perfectly honest. It could be music videos. Basically, they not only are they protected by fair use in this right, but they also have the possibility of positively influencing the original copyright owners, and as well as the copyrighted works, profit line and value, because what they might say might influence people to run out and buy the actual product that they're talking about, or in some cases go to the theater and watch the actual film that is being reviewed. Speaking of video games, walkthroughs and tutorials with commentaries, otherwise known as Let's Plays, are also protected under fair use. This is provided that the person supplying these tutorials and walkthroughs are not gaining monetary or financial benefit from posting these videos. I guess this means that my gameplay videos are pretty much protected, or rather, they should be. So I guess that fact that I'm getting all of these notices should not be a thing that is happening. Go figure. If you're one of those YouTube celebrity people or personalities or whatever who are posting news clips in order to talk about the current events, you're in luck, because that is also protected under the fair use clause. Because it has something to do with the fact that you're giving a different perspective on the actual news events. Even if it's popular belief, it's still your opinion. As a result, you're giving a transformative video, and as a result, that pretty much means that you're giving a new perspective to that headline. So regardless of whether or not whoever posted it in the newspaper wants it to be read online, it's still fair use. Especially if it's factual, because it falls under that factual rule again. Or whether or not the piece of news that you're talking about happens to be fact or fiction. If it's fact, then chances are likely that it will rule in your favor that it is under fair use. So there you go. There's a win-win there. Let's see. Another thing that is protected under fair use are non-commercial podcasts, as well as video blogs, or otherwise known as B-blogs. Basically, again, it's that whole perspective thing. It's that whole transformative videos. However, if you are getting monetary gain or benefit from your podcasts or your B-blogs, then you are required to get permission from the respective copyright holders for using their work, because you're profiting. And last but not least, if you are filming a home video or a documentary and inadvertently manage to get on tape something that is copyrighted, you're fine, because that is protected under fair use. If you did it intentionally, however, you do need to get permission before you use it. That being said, I believe this would also be a case that would require you to consult with legal aid. I'm in no way, shape, or form a lawyer by trade, so before you figure out what you're going to do, or whether you're going to use that, or in those cases, I think maybe it might be best to just blur it, but otherwise, you're safe. You can use it. And with the good comes the bad. There are other types of videos that are floating around YouTube that are very unlikely to be considered free use. Those things are like, say, posting unedited clips from a movie or TV show, or even full music videos that were originally created by the original copyright holder. Those things are not your own. You're not adding any new expression to those types of videos. You're not adding any new perspective to those new types of videos. It is not a transformational type of video, and thus it does fall under copyright infringement. Another type of a video that does not fall under fair use are pretty much if you post professionally produced music in its entirety. Though again, as mentioned earlier in this video, the exception to this rule is as long as you're doing it, say, in an anime music video or in one of those film mashups. If you use copyrighted music in the soundtrack to a commercial or some other form of video that you stand to gain from, then it does not fall under fair use, because in a sense you're gaining from someone else's actions without their express permission, and as a result they could technically sue you for that. It also infringes on the artist's synchronization right. Not entirely sure what that is. I'll probably look that up and put it as a link on the under the description in case anybody's interested. And posting so-called lyric videos that just showcase the full song as well as the lyrics as the screen. Again, you're not adding anything new to this. Again, you're not adding any new perspective. You're not adding any new expression. It's not a transformational video, and thus, even if you're not gaining anything from it, you're still violating copyright. Now, despite everything that has been discussed in this particular video, there are really 4 key things to keep in mind when you're about to post a video, from what I've learned from doing all of this research. The first and foremost is whether or not it is commercial, whether you stand to gain something from posting it, or whether you're doing it without earning anything monetary. If your video changes or alters the original work in some way, giving it new perspective or new expression, thus making it a transformational video. Does your video use more of the original work than it actually needs to? Or are you using just enough to get your point across? Does it harm the market that the original work was intended for? Or can it be used to substitute can your work be used to substitute the original work in any way? If it can, then chances are that the owner is losing out on monetary gain, and as a result, that could be a point against you, regardless of whether or not you're gaining any monetary benefit from it or not. Another thing to keep in mind is that while people may complain that you're infringing on their copyright, you're breaking the law, you're posting stuff that is against their wishes because you never gave them express permission, keep in mind that while you're doing that, you might actually be giving them some free advertisement and getting people interested enough in their work to actually go out and buy it themselves. So keep that in mind, that it can actually be positive. I have to say, when I first started this video, it was originally intended to be sort of a ranting video to sort of explain and get into why I feel that I shouldn't be getting any of these copyright notices, why I feel that my videos are actually fair use videos. But it turned out it slowly began to turn into one of those instructional, this is what this is, and this is how you go about it, and these are the things that fall under this category, these fall out of that category. Not entirely sure what you would call that, maybe tutorial or instructional video. or maybe it's one of those discussion type videos that is also protected under fair use. Anyways, I do feel a little better now that I've gotten this all out in the open, and that I've had my views pretty much expressed to the internet company, and I hope that this video actually helps me out in the long run, and that the harassing notices will stop, and pretty much, yeah, that's pretty much it. This is Queen 3210 signing off and wishing you all a good night or good morning wherever you are.